All right, my sincere apologies. I'm having network challenges here, and I really didn't expect that to go off, but it did. Thank you for sticking and staying. We'll just continue off from where I left off. Yes, so I was explaining that last week, the intention was to use the questions that we contributed to continue today's session. Unfortunately, that is not to be because I lost what we did last week because my machine froze in the process just before we ended the meeting last week. However, we are trying to record today's meeting, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to get the recording over. So today, just again, to be sure that I'm online because I've started screen sharing. If you can hear me, just let me know, please.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear, Doc.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right, so as you can see by way of my screen, today we are focusing on two main items. Yeah. One is to look at the PICO framework, and it's going to be based on where we ended last week with the framing of questions, all right? Then we'll also look at how to search online resources effectively. I want to hope that for today, we are going to finish these two items so that next week, Sunday, we'll continue again from the second item, which is the online searches, to dive deeper into other aspects of our literature exploration. However, at this point, I want to ask anyone in this meeting to remind us. There were some slogans or catchphrases that we used last week to remind us about the session that we had and the process we're following in this series of webinars. I want you to remind us, anyone who can remember, what these catchphrases are.
No.
Yes.
Okay. The first one that I recall is it said research is scholarly conversation.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Alex. Research is a scholarly conversation. And I said you should never forget this because anytime you are embarking on a research, you should know that you are about to join a conversation. And it's a conversation of scholars. And that is why research is not just any ordinary writing. It is something you take your time to scientifically approach to make sure that when you are making your arguments are seen to be sound, they are seen to be innovative, they are seen to be ethical, they are seen to be relevant or useful to the topic of discussion, all right? So research is a scholarly conversation. So we start a research by finding out what the hot topics are. What are the trending issues in my field of expertise? So if you belong to public health scholars, then what are the topical issues in public health now? Okay, that is what should engage your attention when you are selecting a topic. And we said that there were three modes, especially when it comes to academic research, which is what you do as part of your learning at undergraduate or postgraduate level in order to qualify for a certificate or to be graduated. We said, one, your supervisor who is assigned to you could decide to give you a topic, or your academic department could decide to restrict the freedom of selecting topics by proposing themes. Then the third one is where you are given the carte blanche to actually select your own topic. And we said when that becomes the case, the third option, then you will need to be guided by certain scientific frameworks or reasoning to select that topic. And so we mentioned the FINER, FINER, which is an acronym, F for feasibility, I for interesting, that is feasible, interesting. Then the N should be novel or novelty. Then the E for ethical and R for relevant. And I went ahead to explain that there are many ways by which you can try and meet the FINER criteria. One would be, for example, to look on a global scale to see what the interests of your country and other international agencies are in your area. For example, strictly speaking about our meeting, this is public health. So if we are talking health, what are the interests of our global audience and even our own nation about the health? And we can see these in some international charter like the UN Global Goals or the 2030 Agenda of the UN. I also mentioned Agenda 63, that's the AU agenda. And all these are treaties that our countries have signed to. And you would see that most of the efforts that they are making in terms of development in our sector, the health sector, are actually targeted at the Sustainable Development Goals, for example. So I showed you how you can get the Sustainable Development Goals, the Goal 3, which is about health, and how you can, navigate through the targets and indicators to try and align your thoughts or the research problems or interests that you have, which is your topic, to some of these specific targets and indicators that will give you relevance. All right. I also mentioned that besides the FINER, the NIH has what we call the Effective Healthcare Program Topic Selection Criteria. There are also 5 items. And I said you could just Google that up and you will see. I don't know if you tried that. Did anybody try the NIH's Effective Healthcare Program Topic Selection Criteria? Did you type to just search, find out whether there's anything like that as I mentioned? Did you find something? Did anybody try it?
No, Doc.
No, you didn't. Wow. All right. Then, but it will be interesting to find out how that also looks like. Okay. Compare that with the FINER. All right. Then, with our hands-on session, we developed some questions based on a few topics. And we did a critical review of the topics and the questions. All right. Now, unfortunately, as I mentioned, I lost the PowerPoint slide we're working on because of the technical issues that my computer faced during the closing hours of our session last week. However, I want to believe that some of you can remind us or give us some suggestions about where we ended. Well, I really want to get something from you to start from. And so I'm going to open a Microsoft Word document right now. We're going to work from there. And I want at least 3 questions, okay, from the audience, at least 3 questions. We are going to, based on that, to proceed to see how we can think through the PICO framework and how we can help ourselves develop critical questions that are able to answer public health or, evidence-based practice questions, and also help us find the literature. One thing that I must at this point let all of you know is that the reason most of the time you struggle to find the literature is because you start on a wrong note. All right? Finding the literature is like finding answers to your questions. And so in order to find answers, you first pose a question. So the best way to approach literature search is to first pose a very correct question, a question that is consciously and scientifically formulated to give you the various aspects of the topic that you would want to actually review before you step out into the unknown world of databases and search engines and other sources to locate what others may have possibly written on your topic. So at this point, I want to open my Microsoft Word and ask you, anyone at all can volunteer if you can remember any of the questions from last week, I'll be glad to receive them. Otherwise, any new question that you wish to propose, you can bring it up. I'll type it nicely here, and then we'll proceed with it, please. Yes, who is first? Hey, if you don't want to volunteer, I'll volunteer you. Should I volunteer people? Yes, who volunteer their question? Please, can you all hear me?
Yes, Doc.
Yes, please. I need volunteer questions. Either if you can remind us of what we did last week, or
Okay, Doc.
a new question altogether is fine.
All right, so Doc, I think that in framing the question upon the topic that we discussed, these were some of the questions that came up.
Very good. Give me one.
How does Broly ulcer affect the lives of women in Jasikan?
Excellent. That's a good reminder.
And the second one,
yes.
what are the socioeconomic impact of Broly ulcer on women and their families? What are the socioeconomic impacts of Broly ulcer on women and their families?
Yes. Any other?
Hello.
Hello, sir.
Doc, please, another question that popped up was, what is the impact of Broly ulcer on women's lives and their care practices?
Okay, let me just add. What is the impact
of Broly ulcer on women's life and their care practices? Question mark.
Okay. Yeah, any other? Okay, let's proceed with these three. Okay, let me just number them. So we proceed with these three. How does Borrelia ulcer affect the lives of women in Jasikan? What is the socioeconomic impact of Borrelia ulcer on women and their families? What is the impact of Borrelia ulcer on women's lives and their care practices?
Doc,
Okay.
please, can I add one?
Yes, please, add.
Okay, another question that we asked was, is there a relationship between women's care practices and the incidence of Borrelia ulcer? Question mark.
Great. Now, I love all these questions, but first, I would like to find out, can you all see clearly what is on my screen? Can you see the questions clearly?
Yes,
Yes,
please.
Doc.
All right, that's great. Good, so let's pick the first one. How does Borrelia ulcer affect the lives of women in Jasikan? That's very clear and straightforward. And I believe it's a researchable question, and it's also a searchable question. When I say searchable, that means we can actually use it to find literature, all right? When I say researchable, it means yes, we ourselves can conduct a primary study into this. We can investigate that question. Number two, what is the socioeconomic impact of Buruli ulcer on women and their families? Right? That's quite an interesting one. It's also picking a narrow aspect. You see, the first one is quite broad. The effect of Buruli ulcer on women's lives. But if you look at the second question, it is more pointed and straightforward. It is not just the effects in different dimensions or diverse dimensions. It is narrowing on a particular dimension of effect, which is socioeconomic. This is quite very useful when you are particularly dealing with academic research, okay? You don't have all the time. Remember the F of final, feasible. Feasibility is very critical. If you are having just one semester to go, you are not supposed to actually go and pick a topic that is too broad for you to work on. So zeroing in on one small aspect of various dimensions of impact, like the question number 2, for me is quite very important for students who are doing academic research as part of their curriculum. Number 3, what is the impact of Buruli ulcer on women's lives and their care practices? Now, this one, I want anyone to volunteer whether you think this question should pass or we should look at it. Is it okay to leave it that way, or you think it should be revised? Yes, any ideas?
Yeah, Doc, I think that this question should pass.
It should pass, eh?
The only difference it's making from the first question that was asked is the care practices.
Okay.
So yeah, I think that if it could be framed in another way, that could be fine. But for this one, I think it should pass.
Oh, okay. All right. Now, I am of the view that, again, talking about feasibility and in rightly framing your question, you see, ideally, for your level of research, I'm talking about undergraduate, okay? When you don't have a lot of time, it's not like this research that you are doing out of your own volition. It's research you are doing to complete an academic program, all right? And you are tight on time. You are doing this alongside other courses, you are writing exams. There are so many things you are doing. So for me, ideally, when you are pursuing academic research for your undergraduate degree or for any of the degrees lower than PhD, I believe that at least get just one independent and one dependent or outcome variable. All right. Now, Buruli ulcer, women's lives, and let me highlight them for you to see clearly. Okay. Buruli ulcer, women's lives, or simply women. Okay, women's lives, women is the same thing. Then care practices. These are 3 keywords. And you can see that we are asking the impact of ulcer on women's lives. Now, this second one, care practices, I personally am struggling to put it in the right place. Are you asking what is the impact of Buruli ulcer on women's care practices? Or are you asking what are women's care practices in the treatment or management of Buruli ulcer? Which one is the actual question you are asking? Please, are you there?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yes. And are you getting what I'm asking?
Yes.
Yes, Doc, we are getting what you're asking.
Exactly. When you
Yes.
write a question like this, what is the impact of bullying ulcer on women's lives? You see, this could have stopped here. And that
Yes.
would be the same thing as question 1. Okay. How does bullying ulcer affect the lives of women? What is the impact of bullying ulcer? Is the same thing. But when you bring the end, and you should always be careful about that conjunction end, all right? Anytime you bring end, you are about to write a complex or compound sentence that is going to involve several noun phrases. And these noun phrases are going to put you in some kind of jeopardy. Either you are going to be multiplying your outcome variables, or you are going to be getting these kinds of dangling subjects. You don't know what they actually do in the sentence. So, for example, and their care practices. This very and their care practices. Are you asking what is the impact of bullying ulcer on care practices? Okay, can bullying ulcer actually affect care practices, or are we talking about care practices in bullying ulcer management?
Hello, Doc.
Yes, Inia.
Please, the last time the topic that we chose to work on, you gave us 3 noun phrases. Which one was bullying ulcer, women's life, and care practices? And you asked us to use.
That was in the topic, right?
Yes.
Remember, that is a topic, not a question. So a topic, as I said, topic is the research interest area, okay?
That was the topic.
Yes.
And with these 3 noun phrases, you asked us to use the first noun phrase, which is the bullying ulcer, to form a questions. And I think another one of our colleagues used the care practices together with the bullying ulcer and the woman's life.
Yes, that's correct. I am absolutely okay with that. All I'm trying to say, because it's a learning process, I really want you guys to be able to distinguish these things, okay? So that when you are writing a question, your question must be very direct and it must be pointing to a clear independent and dependent variable. All right. The independent is what you might call the cause or how do you call it? Yeah, the cause variable. The outcome or the dependent variable is like the outcome or the effect, sort of. Okay. I'm only trying to say that if you are trying to make the things too complex, you are going to end up with situations like this where we cannot tell what exactly the care prices are doing here. For example, it would have been better to say what are Buruli care practices, Buruli ulcer care practices, or what Buruli ulcer care practices are common in so and so. I think we are using Jessica, so we can use Jessica throughout. Okay, what are the common care practices in the or for the management of Buruli ulcer among women in blah blah blah? In that case, you see, you restrict yourself to Buruli ulcer and care practices. Okay, but where you are looking at impact of Buruli ulcer on women, and then you add care practices, it becomes difficult to actually separate the two. That is the women's lives and care practices from the impact. We cannot tell exactly what impact is doing to care practices. So I feel that there's a problem with this question. It cannot pass. We should be able to separate the care practices. You can form another question with that one, but the question 3 can stop at women's lives. And that means it repeats question 1. Okay. Now question 4. Is there a relationship between women's care practices and the incidence of Buruli ulcer? Wow, I feel this is a very critical question. Very interesting. It's trying to explore association or correlation. All right. That's also a very brilliant question, like the 1, 2, 3, and 4. That is, if the 3 is amended to stop at women's lives, and then we rephrase a question for the care practices. So looking at question number 4, it seems to even answer the problem of question 3, where we are struggling how to separate the care practices from impact on women's lives. So the 4 should actually do it for that second part, care practice of 3, while the 3 main that ends on lives, women's lives, is like a repeat of question number 1. All right. Please, at this point, I want to find out whether we are on the same page so I can proceed. Are we on the same page?
Yes, Doc.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Thank
Doc.
you so much. Okay. So if you're on the same page, then let's explore the PICO. Now, what is the PICO? The PICO, just like FINA, is also an acronym. However, whereas the FINA was tailored towards selecting a topic, the PICO helps you to frame the question. So you get the difference. The FINA would help you identify a topic. That's a research problem or interest. Then the PICO will help you to frame a question. However, what you should know about the PICO is that the PICO has various variants. There are several variations of the PICO depending on the type of question you are asking. Now, instead of me talking too much about this, I would like to open a page. All of you will look at it, we'll read together for you to understand that when we are doing health sciences research, there are specific types of questions that we ask. Usually we say clinical questions, okay? Questions that we want to explore or answer in health sciences. Some concern treatments and their effectiveness. There are others that concern the experience or meanings, feelings that people, for example, caregivers, patients, or health workers attach to certain phenomena. There are those questions that also are concerned with the prevalence and incidence of a certain condition. For example, question 4 here. You see that question 4 is asking about the incidence of Brule ulcer, but it's asking what is an association between that and the care practices of Brule ulcer. Then there are those questions that try to predict whether certain persons, due to their exposure to certain factors, are likely to develop certain disease conditions or health outcomes. So at this point, I want us to go and look at this page. It's from University of Calgary. And I want all of us to read it together. This is Canberra. I read a number of pages. So this is University of Canberra Library. And we are going to look at the PICO framework. And then we are going to look at the types of clinical questions, okay? I was mentioning that the PICO can vary depending on the type of question you want to answer. So at this point, can you all see the University of Canberra Library page that I'm showing?
Yes, Doc.
All right, thank you very much. Please. And is it clear enough, or I should zoom in a little?
Okay, it's clear.
Okay, thank you so much. So now, PICO, you can see the P stands for patient or problem or population. All right. And I like you to think about it this way. When we say patient or problem or population, remember that we are talking about any demographic dimension that you wish to explore. All right. So patient doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a person, but any characteristic of that patient or the population or problem that you want to explore. For example, if it's about the age, I think there was a question like that last week about the age distribution of Brule ulcer or something like that. If I'm right, there was something about age. Okay, so if age is your concern, that age is a population parameter or a problem parameter or patient parameter. So the patient, don't see it always as maybe a full person, but any demographic characteristic of the population will qualify as patient. Then intervention. When we talk about intervention, we are talking about treatment. Now, it could be a pharmacological. Yeah, so sorry, looks like my internet decided to play tricks on me again. Today's network is so terrible. All right, so I'm sharing my screen again. So sorry. The network has been so terrible. But I hope you can hear me again now, please.
Yes, please.
And you can see the screen too, please.
Yes, please.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Now, intervention, as I said, is what is introduced as a treatment. So these treatments can be pharmacological or non-pharmacological, all right? So when we say intervention, it could be education. For example, public health. We know public health is largely preventive health, right? Public health is not curative. It's not clinical. It's not about attending to one patient in their disease condition with therapists trying to recover them. But most importantly, public health focuses on population-wide interventions that can prevent disease and promote health. Am I right or wrong?
All right.
Very good.
Yeah.
So when we say intervention, it's not necessarily medical or pharmacological. It can be education, okay? It can be sensitization. It can be any other kind of therapy, which is even physical activity. For example, we know that for the NCDs, most of the time, we are encouraged to be active. You know, people will go on jogging or walk some distance, a number of steps every day, and that kind of thing. Or sometimes it's just a lifestyle change. Your eating habit, stop smoking. In fact, last week in Ho, I saw around the about a group of young people holding placards and notice boards or signs talking about smoking. So there were pictures about the smoker's body and other things. I don't know whether it's World Tobacco Day or something, but you know, that kind of thing is public education, trying to get people to change their behavior or habits. All these are interventions. So when we say the intervention of the eye, don't see it only as a drug or some kind of pharmacological therapeutic stuff or maybe surgery. No, it's not only those things, but any other thing that you are trying to use to prevent disease or promote health can be intervention. Yeah, is there a question?
No, Doc, please go ahead.
All right, thank you. Then comparison. Comparison here is also an intervention, okay, or a treatment, as you say. But we don't call that intervention because it is like the standard care which we are trying to compare the new or proposed intervention against. And it could also mean no treatment at all. So we call that a placebo. A placebo is something like, let's say, there are two children who one is coughing, okay, and so you are giving that child, let's say, Viscoff C, okay, for children. Then maybe they are twins. So the other one says that you are giving my sister or my brother some kind of treatment, and you don't want me to have any. But you know that he or she is not having any reason to take that thing. So when she's crying, what you decide to do, okay, you also put some water on the bottle top or something and give to her to drink. So she thinks that she's also drunk something that her sister or brother drank. All right. But what she has actually drunk is just ordinary water. It's a placebo, which means it doesn't contain any active ingredients or anything treatment, but it is made to look like it. Or sometimes what the comparison is that no intervention at all is administered. That particular group is left to exist the way they have been with the condition, so that in the end, the intervention group or the experimental group will be compared to those who took no intervention or another intervention to see what the outcome in terms of improvement in health will be. So if your question is about effectiveness of an intervention, you will definitely most likely be in for a comparison sort of. But to remind you, the comparison is not always important. It doesn't have to be there for your people to be valid. Because as I said, some may be placebo, some may be non-existent at all. And so don't worry if the PICO doesn't have every single element appearing in your question. Sometimes they don't all have to appear. Then the outcome is the result of interest. What do you want to see? Is it reduced mortality rate, okay, or increased uptake of a certain intervention, Like what is it that you really want to achieve at the end? That's your outcome. All right. Now, if we understand this, then I want us to move straight to what I mentioned earlier about what you call question types. Okay, question types. So it says when forming your question using PICO framework, it is useful to think about what type of question it is you are asking. Is it therapy? Is it prevention, diagnosis, prognosis, etiology? What kind of question are you trying to answer? The table below illustrates ways in which problems, interventions, comparisons, outcomes vary according to the type or domain of your question. Please, at this point, I want you to pay particular attention. All right. Let's look at all of them. So, therapy. Therapy is about treatment. Okay. Now, if that is the type of question you are asking, for example, you wanted to find out whether a certain therapy or treatment is effective compared to another one, if that's the kind of thing you are interested in finding out. For example, is artesunate amodiaquine more effective than chloroquine in the treatment of malaria or something? Or you wanted to find out whether any of these platelet aggregation inhibitors, okay, for example, aspirin, okay, is aspirin effective in reducing a future heart attack in the elderly? If that is your concern, you wanted to find out whether aspirin can actually reduce heart attacks in elderly people. Okay, so you see clearly you are thinking about therapy, a treatment. That kind of question is a therapy question. In that case, your patient's disease or condition or the category of patients themselves become the P. In my question of is aspirin effective in reducing a future heart attack in the elderly, you realize that the elderly here is the patient. Okay? Or if you choose problem, then it's about heart attack. All right? But population here, I have a clear population designation for elderly people. That is not in younger people, adolescents, or young adults, but elderly people. Then the intervention is what? That therapy, that treatment that I'm trying to test or examine, which is in this case, aspirin. Then the comparison is if there is another intervention or I choose no intervention at all for a particular group or the control group, then that becomes my comparison. But I mentioned earlier that the comparison is not compulsory. It doesn't always have to be there. So in my question example, is aspirin effective in reducing a future heart attack in the elderly? I have not compared aspirin with any other drug or even with a no drug treatment. Okay, so the C will not show up in my question. But the outcome, what is the outcome I'm looking at? I said again, is aspirin effective in reducing? So you see, reduction in heart attack, reducing heart attack. That is my outcome. Please, at this point, I want to find out, did I explain well? Are you on the same level with me?
Yes, Doc, it's very practical.
Thank you very much. So let's just read the rest here and then move quickly on. My 1 hour is even gone already, but because of the in and out of the network, I'll add some minutes, all right? So let's look at the next type of question, prevention. Maybe you are asking a question about prevention, okay? So what are the risk factors? That's the patient population or problem. Then what is the preventive measure? Here, for example, a lifestyle change. Then here, if you are interested in comparing with another, okay, then you state it. And again, outcome, you can see all these are practical examples of the type of question and how the PICO is applied. Let's look at diagnosis. Specific disease or condition of interest is the problem. The intervention is a diagnostic test that you are trying to test. Okay, the comparison or comparator is the gold standard. Let's use this for example. In diagnosing malaria, right? What is the gold standard? What is the standard approach for diagnosing malaria? Yeah, Evans. Yes, Evans. Okay, let me check. If Evans, maybe you are not allowed to talk. Let me see if I can do that. Evans. Okay, I've allowed you now. Evans, kindly unmute and speak.
Okay, Doc. So the standard is that before you do that, you need to test the person. And if the person is positive, you treat with ACTs. And
Okay,
the ACTs.
that's good. Just wait there. You see, the kind of question we want to ask is diagnosis. So the diagnosis, it means testing. We are trying to be sure that the person has malaria. So yes, the standard is to test. We are talking about the tests. Which one is more effective? That's the kind of question we are trying to ask. Okay. So what I'm asking is that in the therapeutic settings, let's say in the hospital or clinical setting, what is the current or standard practice for testing for malaria falciparum or the presence of malaria, that's a Plasmodium falciparum, the malaria parasite? What's the standard for testing for the presence of the Plasmodium falciparum?
Doc, please, by using microscopy.
Thank you. Excellent. So microscopy is the standard when it comes to diagnosis of malaria. So let's assume that right now, our interest is finding out whether the RDTs will outperform microscopy. Do you get a picture now?
Yes.
So in that case, RDT becomes our intervention. And then microscopy is going to be the reference or the gold standard against which we are going to be comparing the results of RDT. Then our interest is, that is the outcome, is to find out the diagnostic accuracy of RDT compared to the standard practice of using microscopy as the gold standard. Is that also clear?
Sure, Doc.
Yes. So I'm saying all this is so I understand that, you see, the questions that we write, we don't just dream the questions. You see that it's very technical. You sit down and plan. The question I want answered, is it a therapeutic or treatment question? Is it a prevention question? Is it a diagnosis question? Now, what is prognosis? Prognosis. Now, prognosis about how a disease will likely turn out, okay? How it will develop, or whether there's a likelihood of picking some disease, that kind of thing. Am I right?
You are right.
Very good. So in that case, if you're trying to make a forecast, what are the elements of PICO? How are they adjusted or adapted to write a question that is a prognosis type question? So we said duration and severity of main prognostic factor or clinical problem. Then the intervention will be usually time or watchful waiting. Now, again, remember that I said a C or comparison is not always very important. So in a prognosis question, for example, it is not important. Then in the end, since we are talking about how a disease will progress or turn out, we are looking at outcomes such as survival rates, mortality rates of a disease or whatever. Are you there? The last one that we want to talk about here is the risk or etiology. Okay. What are the risk factors or the current health disorders of your population? When we say risk factor, let's say, for example, the most popular topic in Ghana for some time now, which should be of public health concern, is galamsey, right? Do you agree with me?
Yes, Doc.
Okay.
Yes.
And if you agree that galamsey is a topical issue in Ghana, now we want to find out, for example, women who are exposed or women of reproductive age who are exposed to the chemicals used in small scale or illegal mining that we call galamsey. We know that they use such items as mercury, cyanide, or whatever. Am I right? You have you been reading those things? Do you know much about galamsey?
Hard metals, yes.
Very good. So those heavy metals. Now we want to find out whether women of reproductive age, that is ages 15 to 49, I guess that's the international standard. Okay, women of reproductive age. Let's assume these people who are exposed to the small scale mining, are they at risk of contracting cervical cancer, or is there a risk of adverse birth outcomes, deformities, and blah blah? Are you getting the kind of idea I'm bringing about? So,
Yes.
what are the risk factors? Or let's say, people who live around the sea, okay, our friends from maybe Keta all the way to, is it Choco areas, Nungwa, the beach areas? I mean the sea, not the river. Now, all of you are aware that the sea is salty, right? And that salt is actually able to corrode, metallic, let's say iron properties like roofing sheets and the rest. Am I right on that? Even cars, the bodies of cars that are exposed to the sea breeze and all of that, are you aware that it hastens their corrosion?
Doc, it's true. I live at Cape Coast. I experience those rusts on my ceiling fan.
Thank you so much, Isaac. So let's say that becomes your concern, okay? And so you realize that the people who are dwelling along the coast, and I mean the sea coast of Ghana, from Cape Coast all the way to Keta in the Volta region here, let's assume that because of this, they tend to use asbestos roofing materials instead of the standard zinc or galvanized iron, just to prevent the corrosion. But we also know that exposure to asbestos is a likely cause of some range of respiratory disorders or infections. Have you seen it? So asbestos use now becomes a risk factor for contracting respiratory tract infections. Hello, my people, are you there?
Please, we are here.
Are you following me?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Are you liking the discussion?
Yes, it's interesting, Doc.
Thank you very much. All I'm trying to do at this stage is that I just want to open your eyes to the fact that when it comes to even the questions that you are writing, it is technical. It is not something you just write as normal English, okay? You think through it scientifically. So first ask yourself, what type of clinical question do I want to answer? Is it therapy? Is it prevention? Is it diagnosis? Is it prognosis? Is it etiology or risk? Now, when you have satisfied that, then you manipulate the PICO to fit the type of question that you want to answer. So let's look at a few examples. For a therapy question, it says, in patients with osteoarthritis of the knee. So you see the population or problem statement is here. Have you seen it? Patients with osteoarthritis of the knee. Now, what is the intervention? We are reading it across from left to right as a sentence, but you should see by the columns of the table that this has been neatly passed into the constituent components of the PICO. So in patients with osteoarthritis of the knee, is hydrotherapy more effective than traditional physiotherapy in relieving pain? Have you seen a clinical research question?
Yes.
Very good. That's a therapy question. So here, the intervention of concern is hydrotherapy. And our intention is to check against the standard practice of physiotherapy, whether hydrotherapy will be more effective in achieving what? Pain relief.
Relieving. Yeah.
Exactly, pain relief. Have you seen it? All right. So again, it's technical. You think through this. So you don't just write the question. Before you write, ask yourself, what are the PICO elements? Because this is going to help us later in our search for the literature. All right. Second one, prevention. For obese children, does the use of community recreation activities compared to educational programs on lifestyle changes reduce the risk of diabetes mellitus? You see how a clinical question is asked? So the population is obese children. So child obesity, that's the problem of concern. Now, what is the intervention? Recreational activities, let's say recreation parks. You know, we have children's parks in almost every community where they can go and play football and other stuff. Have you seen it?
Yes.
So what we are trying to ask here simply is about physical activity. So if we expose those children to physical activity compared to educational programs on lifestyle change, I mean, imagine you are talking about children. What kind of education programs are you going to be offering to them to change what kind of lifestyle? You think you can tell or convince the child not to take toffee, which is laced with sugar? Will it be easy? It will be hard, right?
Yes.
But if you introduce a child to some games that will make them exercise without even knowing, whether it is football or driving a toy car or something else, have you seen it? So we are trying to find out, compared to trying to get a child to change certain habits, if we introduce them to recreational activities or physical activity, won't it rather reduce the risk of diabetes mellitus? All right. Now the rest, I hope you can see, etiology. Do adults who binge drink compared to those who do not have higher mortality rates? Again, remember that here, for example, in the etiology question, there is no need to break this. So in this last question, for example, we realize that the comparator is not really needed because the comparator is simply those who don't binge drink. So is that also a comparator? You could have actually written the question simply as, do adults who binge drink have higher mortality rates? Simple. Because we know necessarily that what it means is that we are comparing against those who do not binge drink. All right. Now, I don't know if this explains the PICO to you. If it does, let's return to our drawing board and look at our questions one by one and ask ourselves, what types of questions are these that we have put up? Are they prevention? Are they prognosis? Are they etiology? Are they incidence or prevalence? And are they intervention or therapy questions or diagnosis? But before we do that, I want you to know that all these clinical question types that we have actually mentioned, okay, can broadly be grouped into what we call background and foreground questions. Background and foreground questions. Now, background questions are questions that are directed at general information on the topic. Okay, general information on the topic. So we want to just have general knowledge. And these are the kinds of questions that begin what, how, where, when, why. You see, those kinds of content questions, they are all background questions. Now, foreground questions in clinical studies or health sciences or evidence-based practice studies are those questions that are narrowly directed at interventions, effectiveness. And you usually see these questions beginning with verbs. You will not see this what, how, why, and that kind of question. And they are narrower, okay? Let me just put here, you should get the difference. They are narrower and very direct, exploring a specific dimension. These ones are broader in scope. So again, in formulating your questions, you need to ask yourself, am I looking to explore a foreground or a background question? Are my questions directed at general information or knowledge on the topic? Or am I digging deep into a very specific narrow area that will be of niche interest for a particular group of persons? Or simply, am I doing intervention studies? Am I checking the effectiveness of something which is so specific? Or am I generally exploring some broad ideas on the topic? So let's go back to the top. How does Buruli ulcer affect the lives of women in Jasikan? Please, is this a foreground or background question? Yes, Evans. Yeah, Evans, kindly unmute and speak. Yeah, it's background. Thank you very much. What about the second one? What is the socioeconomic impact of Buruli ulcer on women and their families?
Background.
Background. Good. What is the impact of Buruli ulcer on women's lives?
Background.
Background.
All right. Is there a relationship between women's care practices and the incidence of Buruli ulcer?
Foreground.
Thank you, Erica. Excellent. Have you seen it? All right. Now, let's begin to find out where is our PICO in all of this. Okay. So let's pick the first question. Question number 1. I'll bring it down here for us to break it down. So what you're about to do is to parse. When I say parse, I mean parse. P-A-R-S-E. Okay? Please, you understand that?
No, please.
Okay, to parse is to break down, okay, split in pieces. So we are going to pass this question along the PICO framework. Okay? So I want you to give me what the P, the I, the C, O are in this question. So we are going to pass questions into PICO elements. We are doing this because we already wrote the questions earlier before coming to learn the PICO, right? The other, in the right case, you should have first known about PICO before you started doing your questions. But now that you are reading the questions already, let's see if we can still break down these questions into the PICO elements. All right. So tell me, what is the P of this question right now? What's the population, patient, or problem in this particular question?
Women.
Excellent. Women.
Yeah, women.
Excellent. All right. What about our I, intervention?
Is it effect?
The thing is critical now. What is our I?
Effect. Affect the lives.
I'm hearing affect. Don't try that too. It will backfire.
See any intervention in the question?
Come again.
I don't see any intervention in the question.
Okay. Then we move to comparator. Do you see any comparator?
There's no comparator.
Okay. Now,
No.
the I hope you are here.
Yes.
Remember, I said that the I is intervention if it is therapy. But you saw that there are different types of questions. So if the question is not a therapy question, if the question is a theology, if the question is prognosis, are you getting the whole thing? Will it still be intervention as in terms of treatment? No. So here, the I becomes E. Okay? E for what? Exposure. Exposure. So it could be intervention where the question is about therapy or treatment. But in this question, we are not asking a treatment question. And so this is not an I, but an E, exposure. And so our exposure here is what? What are the women exposed to?
Brully ulcer.
Thank you very much. So Brully ulcer becomes our I, which is 10E. Please, are we learning something?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. Then our C. Is there any C here?
I don't think so.
Thank you. There's no C. It's not applicable. Because, again, remember, this is not intervention study. It's not effectiveness study. So there's nothing to compare with. Okay? All right. Okay. What about outcome? Is there an outcome here?
Yes.
Okay, Osborne, say them. Let me see if you are muted or not. I'll help do that. All right, Osborne, please unmute and speak.
Yeah, dog.
Yes.
Lives.
Lives.
Yeah, lives of women.
Okay. Hey, let me put it there. He says lives of women, right? Well, let's see. Is that an outcome?
Okay, dog. Affect. Okay, the affect. Oh.
Affect.
Yeah.
I like that again. Affect. Please, are you all watching what's happening?
Yes.
Affect. Now, I like the way you put it. But remember something. Last week, after looking at all the topics, okay, and picking out what we called the key words or key phrases, I asked you an important question. I asked you to determine what was common to all of them. We picked out the key phrases, Brully ulcer, women, and care practices. 3. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Very good. And I asked you what is common to these 3 keywords that we picked out. Yes, Isaac.
Please, you said they are all noun phrases.
Excellent. So, yes, I admitted the affect here because I see that's critical thinking that went into this. However, in order to make it a key phrase or key word, you change the affect here is a transitive verb, right? Are you lost?
No, Doc, we are with you.
I'm here.
Thank you. Remember, English is very important at this stage. If you don't know your parts of speech very well, you get confused. So affect is a transitive verb. Now, if we are picking the keywords, don't forget that the PICO here are all keywords which are NPs. They are noun phrases. So instead of affect, you should change the word affect into its nominal form. What would be the nominal or the noun form of affect? This one, if you answer me tomorrow we meet at school, I'll give you a handshake.
Doc.
Yes, my boss.
Please, if you want to talk about the outcome, as it is affecting the lives of women, can you talk about mortality?
No, at this point, we cannot tell what the outcomes are. But from the question that we have asked, we are just breaking the question down. Don't go outside the question. Okay, looking at the phrases or the sentence that we have in front of us. If we are breaking this down, just like we pick women out, pick Boruli also out. We're also picking out the word affect. And I say, yes, I've accepted the affect. But affect is a transitive verb.
Is it effect?
Even though there's a noun called affect, it is not what it is in this particular context. That word affect has to do with emotions or whatever. But no, that is not what we are using here. Here we are using the word affect, which is a verb that carries an object or complement. So all I'm asking is that convert the word affect here into a noun phrase. It's currently a verb. Yeah, Osborne, your hand is up.
Effect.
Hey, who answered?
Blessing.
Hey, Blessing. Hey, tomorrow I have to give you lunch.
Please, I'm not in school. When I come, I'll come for it.
Oh no, if you're not in school, then it is expired. That's fine. Excellent.
Oh no, I'm like.
Oh, it's expired, Papa. So this is effect. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Effect. Now, I am very happy you are able to see through this way. Even though we didn't think about PICO before writing out the question, yet you can actually break down this question and see the PICO element. You see, this is very critical because before you start the actual search, you will need these elements. Remember when I teased them out of the topic last, women, Broly ulcer, care practices. If you're not able to break down your question or topic like that, then it will be difficult communicating with computers. Remember last week, I gave you a distinction between natural or human language and then machine language. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Please be keeping your notes, so don't be forgetting. Okay. Now, next week, we are going to actually start from this particular place and build advanced search strategies. All right. It looks like the 1 hour is not enough for us, but my meeting time for the next meeting is already 30 minutes into the time. So I'll have to end here. But I'm hoping that you guys will take your time and look at the rest of the 3 questions. What I'm going to do right now is I'll share what we have done right now on the club page, okay, the WhatsApp, the library club page. I'll share it so you can look at these 3 questions. I've just worked with you on the number 1. I want you to go get to work on the rest. When we meet, I'll be asking questions, all right? You give me how you have passed or broken it down. Remember that, as I said, I also shared the link, okay? The link that I showed where we went to read about the PICO, the Canberra University. I think Canberra University. We'll look at, I'll share that link also. Look at it closely, understand this PICO, know that the PICO can change, okay? And depending on the question, the elements may not remain the same way that they are. When we meet next Sunday, we'll continue from this point, and then we'll actually begin to build some search strategies. But before we meet on the search strategies using the PICO elements, remember the second thing I said you should remember from last week. The second catchphrase was that, yes, who will tell us?
Doc, please come again.
Yeah, from last week's session, there were two catchphrases I said you should never forget. The first one we were told at the beginning by Alex, that research is a scholarly conversation. Now, the second catchphrase that we shared last week, I wanted to remind us about it. For us
Okay, so Doc,
yes.
Please, you said a search is a strategic exploration.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Just keep these two in mind, because next week we are starting the actual search. And you understand why we say that searching is strategic exploration. So before we meet next week, please do not forget that searching is strategic exploration. And we are going to build on the fact that, one, we first have to create a searchable question which has a clear or analytical framework based on the PICO, that we can pick out the elements or the noun phrases immediately. Then three, that we have natural language and we have machine language. So if we are about to approach a search, we have to strategize what aspects of our questions are we going to address to human beings or human-like information retrieval systems. And when I say human-like information retrieval systems, I hope all of you are aware that we now have artificial intelligence based on natural language processing, or what we usually call the LLMs, the large language models, which are generative AI. Please, have I taken into the spirit?
Yes, we are in the spirit.
All right. So we are going to be looking at using the right tools for the right job. Okay. So just not to forget before we meet, I'm reminding you, remember that searching is strategic exploration. And as part of that strategy, you must distinguish natural language from machine language. And that we should also understand the PICO and understand that the PICO can vary based on the type of clinical question. And that clinical questions can be either foreground or background. Okay. Now, on this note, I want to stop sharing if you allow me. And then if there are any questions, I'll answer. Then we'll call it a day. Should I stop sharing? Is there any question on the page? All right.
Doc.
Yes.
So if I get the later parts of your presentation, so it means that we shouldn't use natural languages when we are asking machine questions.
Okay. That question will be answered in next week's session. We'll see whether using natural language for machines will work. But as I mentioned, don't forget that now we have different kinds of machines. There are machines that are operating on artificial intelligence. That means they are behaving like human. Okay? But there are also machines that are operating as real machines, not human, which are mostly the search engines, even though some are actually integrating the AI technologies now. But that particular question, rest assured, it will be answered practically in next week's session. All right?
All right, Doc.
Yes, Sir Osborne, you raise your hand.
Yeah, Doc.
Yes, please.
Please, I would like to ask about time being, if time can be factored into the PICO element, because some framework they add T to it. So I want to, is it always that we should add a T or we should ignore the T when framing our research question?
All right. That's a very important question. Remember very well, I said that the PICO has variance, right? It can be varied. So it depends on what you are looking at. If you think that what you are finding out, time is an important factor, then you must include time. It becomes PICOT. So for example, you are dealing with the incidence of boric ulcer in Jessican between 2000 and 2020, a 20-year period. You understand? Now, if you believe that that time frame is very critical, a component of your investigation, then it has to be added. However, when we come to next week's session, you will see how these things play out. There are certain elements of the PICO that you will not need when you are searching as a keyword. You might implement them as limits or what you call filters. So a lot of these things, all we are doing right now between last week and today is just to give us background knowledge or the theoretical aspect of search and retrieval of literature. So from next week, we'll begin to put these theories into practice and see how they actually work. Now, apart from the T, which is time, even S, which is PICOS, that is a steady type, can also be added. People can decide to add that, well, this, my whatever, is a prospective cohort study, a randomized controlled trial, a systematic review, a meta-analysis. You see, when they add those kinds of things, then they are adding the steady type dimension to the PICO. So yes, the PICO can be varied, either by time or by specifying the steady type, or even by changing some of the elements like you have seen in this question where we change the I to E, because in this case, it's not a therapy question, but it's more of a kind of, should I say, exposure or theology question. In some kind of cloak, all right? So it has become an E instead of an I. So yes, the PICO is just a generic framework, and it is most importantly aligned to foreground questions. That's effectiveness studies or therapy or intervention studies. However, it can be adapted and it can be, adjusted to fit other kinds of questions, even qualitative questions. Okay, qualitative questions which are trying to explore the meanings that people attach to experiences or phenomena. You can adjust the PICO to fit that. We'll look at all of that from next week onwards.
All right, Doc.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to stop the share now. And if at this point anyone has anything else to say, let's hear, or I'll say from my end, a very big thank you to all of you. If you have not joined the library club page yet, please ask your friends, try and join via the link I have shared last week. And again, my appeal to all of you is that levels 300 and 400 who have not yet participated in my PhD study survey, please do so. I've actually shared a reminder. I did that yesterday, I guess, on the library page. Please try and also share with your friends. Encourage your friends to support me to collect data quickly. I need about 600 responses from the two classes, 400 and 300. And I need that as soon as possible. So please share with your roommates, share with your close friends, encourage them to help me, and I'll be very grateful to you. Yes, Stanley. Your hand is up.
Doc,
Yes, please.
please, when you were speaking, you said you shared some link the last time we met, but unfortunately, some of us couldn't end the meeting, so we don't have that link. So I don't know if you could reshare it.
Okay, so I'll share right now the WhatsApp group joining link, right? Are you on the WhatsApp group already?
No, please.
Okay, then let me share that in the Q&A session. That's immediately. Let me see, what am I using? Am I using the Q&A or the chats? I think the chats are not open to all of you. Let me check. Okay.
Hello, Doc.
Yes, I've shared to everyone. Please check if you can. Do you have the chats active on your end?
Yes, it's active here.
Very good. Can you see the link I've just shared?
No, please. Please reshare it. It's like my network was, it wasn't stable, so I just rejoined
Stanley.
again. Yeah.
Stanley. Don't worry, I'll send it to you on WhatsApp.
Okay.
Okay.
That's
Okay,
great.
thanks.
All right. So please join the WhatsApp group, and I will also share my survey link again. Please, all of you, 300s and 400s, try and help me to share it to your friends and also to complete it as quickly as possible for me to finish my program on time. Thank you very much. And please, remember that you can always call on us at the library, or you can send us an email. I hope all of you have the library email already. A simple fnbsph@uhas.edu.gh. Okay, fnbsph@uhas.edu.gh. It is actually on the flyer. Okay, the flyer for this meeting or webinar. So you can get it from there, or just walk to any of our libraries, the print or electronic. I am usually at the electronic. You see my colleague, Mr. Obing, at the print session. Call on us at any time at all, and let's talk on your research project or any other learning issues, and let's see how we can help you to succeed. All right? Okay. So thank you all, and I will actually end the meeting here with kind regards to everybody. Thank you very much. I'll actually share the recording, so please rest assured, okay? All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Doc.